We're really happy to start off the series this semester with an awesome group, and it's headed by Stuart Coleman, who will be one of our speakers. Stuart is a co-founder and executive director of Hawai, Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations. He's also the former longtime regional manager of the Surfrider Foundation, and he brings a world of experience and dedication to improving Hawaii's environment. And so we're really happy to have him kicking off this series along with Michael Mezzacapo. Michael, as all of us at Water Resources know, is one of ours. He is an outreach specialist. He's on our faculty jointly with Sea Grant, and he has been focusing a lot of his attention on the cesspool problem. He's part of the cesspool replacement working group, and he does awesome work. So we'll have both of them today. So Stuart, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Tom. Great to see you all here, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk about our presentation today. This has been, ever since the COVID-19 hit, we have been working on this presentation, and we put together a great crew of people. And I think Elizabeth is allowed to share the slides. We can get that up, but it's, we were asked by a number of people in, at the state level and in philanthropy, once COVID hit, to put together a workforce development project. And we originally were working with Rachel Solomsauce at the University of Hawaii Community Colleges, and then reached out to this crew that Michael will talk about later on, that involves the Water Resources and Research Center, Sea Grant, and Department of Health, and VI. And VI is a new nonprofit, as Tom mentioned, that's dedicated to reducing sewage pollution in Hawaii. We called it Work for Water because we wanted to focus on 4 things: workforce development, infrastructure investment, cesspool replacement, and water protection. We also are going to be doing cesspool replacements in all 4 counties, and we hope to do 400, all total, 100 in each county. Go to the next slide.
So as Stuart kind of already alluded to, we have a number of folks on the team. We have Vi, but we also have folks from the University of Hawaii Community Colleges who will handle curriculum development. And we thought it was very fitting for those folks to be involved, because we are able to kind of stretch out our educational outreach. So we're able to hit people who are finishing up high school all the way to more advanced degrees. And we figure it would be a great sort of pipeline through the system to use the community colleges. And they also have programs like CAD design and things like that. University of Hawaii Water Resources Research Center has also been very involved with researching the issue of cesspool pollution. And Hawaii Sea Grant as well has extensive extension agent networks that we can tap into. And then we need to partner with the wastewater branch of the Department of Health in order to accomplish our goals.
And we put that slide up just to remind people that cesspools are like having toilets on the beach. And so this is, the surfer on the right is the son of one of the folks on the call today. And it's just, this is part of the PSAs that we do to just kind of have some fun with the topic, but also remind people about the nature of the problem. All right, as many of you know, because there are a lot of people on this call who've actually done extensive research in this area and hugely helpful, we have actually over 90,000 cesspools across the state, and they release more than 53 million gallons of sewage into our groundwater every day. Now, to put that into perspective, the bottom right picture, if you guys remember the sewage spill in 2006, the worst sewage spill in Hawaii's history and one of the worst in the country at the time, that was 48 million gallons. It shut down all of Waikiki, all the beaches, and made international headlines. And we have more of that going into, more than that going into our groundwater every day across the state. And so as part of Act 125, we had a coalition of groups that helped pass this law to upgrade all of the cesspools by 2050. And then when we did the simple math, we realized we have a very complex problem. That means 3,000 conversions a year for the next 30 years. Currently, we're doing about 150 a year. So we have to ramp that up dramatically by 20 times. Now, the good news is that means that the workforce is also going to have to expand. And then to kind of give you the relevance of this issue, this is a picture of Hanalei after the 2018 floods, where we hit a world record of, more than 50 inches in a 24-hour period. And with sea level rise and climate change, we're going to be experiencing more of these kind of drastic events, and the sea level rise will affect these cesspools and more as we go on.
So it's helpful to understand what is the problem with cesspools. We've heard kind of people say, well, what's the big deal? Well, there's two big takeaways that I always like to leave people with, and that there's really little to no treatment of the waste. It's just a disposal system, and that there's a direct connection to ground, nearshore, and surface waters. So if you look at the diagram on the left, you're going to see that basically it's like a box with perforations on the side. And so the sludge will settle to the bottom, and the liquids are free to move out of those perforations. And in Hawaii, because of our volcanic geology, we know it's very porous and can often move quite quickly in certain areas, especially like areas of Pu'uko'a on the Big Island. And it can enter groundwater and then also enter the ocean. So then that can transfer pathogens and nutrients that aren't treated basically by an absorption system.
And this just gives you a quick glimpse of the more than 11,000 cesspools on Oahu. And you can see, no matter where you live, there are certain priority areas that have been identified, but they're all over the place. And this was kind of the standard, even though it's a substandard system for many years in Hawaii with fast development. And so whether you own a cesspool or not, the problem affects you because it affects our drinking water and our groundwater and coastal waters.
And so one of the main reasons that we wanted to jumpstart this program is because we knew that, it needed sort of that spark in order to get going. We have the mandate through Act 125 to convert cesspools by 2050, but what we don't have is a way to really get moving. And so we created the project based on these three projects. And that was to create resilient and educated workforce. So as Stuart was saying, if we had to replace 3,000 units per year, we just don't have the people, the inspectors, the installers, the contractors to complete such an endeavor like that. And so we wanted to ask the question, what would we need in order to achieve our goal of replacing those cesspools so we could meet our mandate? And then we also wanted the option to evaluate new technologies that are proven on the mainland, but not in use in Hawaii. And the reason we want to do that is because if we can demonstrate the applicability of the technology and the success of certain technologies, then we can fast track the permitting systems at the Department of Health. So it won't take so long to permit a system that is maybe a novel technology, but used on the mainland, but just not used here. And then finally, improve water quality and ecosystem for the residents of Hawaii and the visitors as well. Many people rely on the reef for fishing, for tourism, And we also sit over a sole source aquifer. So it's very important that we protect our drinking water quality and nearshore water quality.
And, you know, as building on what Michael said about, you know, some of the environmental health risks associated with sewage pollution, like I mentioned in the beginning, COVID kind of triggered a lot of this Work for Water initiative. And we now know that, you know, it can be traced in wastewater, and indeed, it actually can be used as one of the more accurate ways to detect how many people in a certain area might have it. And so that's being used across the country, and there have been a number of, you know, other counties across the country that are doing this. But, you know, as Michael said, we're also, one of the big reasons is we need to jumpstart our economy by creating these shovel-ready projects, and then really focusing on some of the most at-risk areas that DOH has identified, you know, as priority 1 through 3, where there's a known or suspected or potential threat to drinking water and coastal water. And so by doing this, we'll kind of create a blueprint for each of the counties and the state to fulfill the mandate under, you know, 125 to convert all these cesspools by 2050. And to do that, we're already in the process of applying for grants to develop training courses in the wastewater sector at the community colleges to create long-term, well-paid jobs that most importantly are not dependent on tourism. There are a lot of projects going around that, you know, trying to get people back to work, but this is one of the few that helps fulfill a state mandate, and also these jobs will not go away. These are long-term jobs because, you know, these with 90,000 to convert, by the time we convert those in 30 years, with a lifespan of about 30 years, we're going to have to start replacing, excuse me, all the other ones. So it's actually a very promising sector if you know people, you know, who want to go into it, because you can enter it from many different levels, in the high school, college, and then graduate level for, you know, jobs like engineering and such. And then once we create these jobs, we really think it'll help our economy, you know, by the multiplier effect of money, more money being spent here, and then more income taxes coming into the state.
So our solution to the problem was, as we said, the workforce for water, but it really relies on those 4 pillars: the workforce development, infrastructure investment, cesspool replacement, and water protection. And how we achieve that, you can take a look at the diagram on the right, is by first really doing public outreach. So getting the public to understand what is the problem with cesspools, even if they don't have a cesspool, like Stuart was saying. If you recreate in the ocean, or if you rely on the ocean for fishing or other things, you know, it's important for you to not have cesspools around that area that could be potentially polluting the nearshore water. So that's really the first step. And we want to make sure that people understand why we're doing this and how it will benefit them. And then we need to move on to the permitting and design phase. And with that, we're going to need a lot of engineers to design these systems. We're going to need architects, and we're going to need people at the Department of Health to process these permits. And then after that, we're going to have to figure out a way to manufacture and install all these systems. So we're going to have to train workers, like, and these are small mom and pop operations. These are not big construction companies. So it's going to be folks that are contractors, subcontractors, who are going to be installing these systems, because they're, you know, they're smaller cost and they're site specific. So a lot of local knowledge will go into understanding the geology in the area. Once we do that, we also hope to really attract manufacturers, because we ship a lot of products in right now, and that's very expensive. So even if we were to just ship parts disassembled, say for septic tanks or ETUs, and have a manufacturer here to assemble those, that can save on shipping costs. You can put more in shipping containers. So our hope is to really add value and maybe attract manufacturers as well. And once we build and install all these systems, we're gonna, like I said, have inspectors, installers, we're going to need folks to maintain and evaluate those systems. And this is sort of a circular, the reason we have the circular design here is because this is going to occur in a cyclical cycle. So they usually typically last between 30 and 50 years. So the cycle is going to have to repeat itself. You know, systems are going to fail and those type of things, and people, depending on when they upgraded their system, are going to have to do the same thing over again. So we're going to need folks to be able to pump the septic systems or ATU units. We're going to need inspectors to evaluate them, make sure they're functioning properly. So it really, as Stuart was saying, it's well-paying jobs that are non-tourism dependent, but that are also long-lasting. So they're not going to just disappear after a manufacturer closes down or something like that. We also want, oh, do you want me to
go ahead, Mike. You go ahead.
So one of the other things too, and we, by working with a lot of different stakeholders in the water quality realm, we want to take a one water approach. So really, you know, water has intrinsic value. And we wanted to make sure that when we're thinking about this problem, we're really going beyond just a siloed view of the issue. Like, oh, you know, this is just Department of Health's realm here. But it's not, because we really envision this as, okay, we need to work with nonprofits. We need to work with private businesses. We need to work with the government, because these systems cause sustainability and resilience issues from their current standpoint. And we want to be able to make sure that what we're doing is going to protect the public health and ecosystem health. And in order to do that, we really need the one water lens.
Great, thank you, Michael. And so this is a 3-year project, the Work for Water initiative. And in the first year, we will design and permit the work replacing those 400 cesspools, continue working with the University of Hawaii Community Colleges to develop that curriculum and training, starting with a minimum of 120 trained workers. And then we're going to be bringing in new individual wastewater system technologies, some that are passive, that don't have moving parts, that we hope will be less expensive, and yet ironically are also can be more effective than more expensive systems. And then continuing to do public education and outreach. And I think that's where, you know, with the knowledge and kind of wisdom of the folks on this call, that's something we can, you know, we ask for your help with, to really, you know, talk to people about this issue so they're more aware of the problem.
So in the second and third year, we want to really test, we're looking at testing these systems. So we'll have lysimeters and we'll be monitoring the wastewater quality. And really it will kind of give us a lot of data that we can work with. And that'll help us develop sort of that expedited permitting process. So in that, you know, we're hoping to expand the market competition so that we can, as Stuart was saying, get these lower cost systems that are passive, hopefully, that don't require electricity, that are easy to maintain, that are more resilient and sustainable. So if we lose power or we had a hurricane, if everyone's operating on individual wastewater systems that require electricity, that could be problematic if we don't have power for a long time. So once we find those fully tested and designed criteria, we can expedite those permits. But then also we'll take a look at our programs and see what areas we might need to expand. Do we need to add more inspectors, more contractors? So, you know, in the second and third years, we're able to kind of also look backwards and see where we want to go, which I'll let Stuart describe, which is the sort of broader long-term vision.
Yeah, so our long-term goal is, you know, as we mentioned, to create this kind of robust and resilient workforce that's not dependent on tourism. And we think that this could create up to, you know, 2,000 workers. Bring in these new innovative technologies that are going to be better for the environment. Work with DOH and the wastewater branch to help kind of streamline the permitting process, and, you know, eventually create a geo-reference database so people can know exactly where they are. and as Michael said, increase that local manufacturing capacity to create even more jobs and bring the price down further.
So here's a kind of an overview of the project budget. We put in about $2 million for design and permitting. So there's going to be, if we're doing 100 systems in each of the counties, 400 total, we'll need that much in order to process the permitting, develop the site schematics, and do all the engineering work. And then we've also put in 700,000 for inspection and compliance and adding Department of Health workers to support this endeavor so that permitting can be expedited. And you can see the bulk of the cost is really the installation. So we budgeted about $40,000 per system. And so it comes out to about $4 million per island. And the reason we did that is sort of on the higher end is because we're going to need some monitoring equipment as well. These will be labs for community college students to learn how to install them, inspect them, and maintain them. So that's very important. And there we go. And we'll need some money to develop the research project and analyze the data. And then also money for outreach and database development. One of the things we don't have right now is sort of an accurate digital database of all the cesspools and on-site sewage disposal systems. And so it's important to maintain that so then we can see where systems are failing or where new permits need to be issued. Many other states actually, the EPA recommends it, but on the mainland, many other folks have these just a given. And then finally, 1.8 million for our workforce development and training. So this will be at the community college level to develop curriculum, pay instructors, and also give stipend to students. So they're tuition free. So they're going to be able to have this education without paying for it. And we think that is a tremendous benefit to help reach workers who might not have the money or are a disadvantaged status or displaced from previous positions.
Now, as soon as we lay all that out for you, we also need you to know, before you get out your checkbooks, that this is very scalable. We wanted to do a sizable number like 400 because we have 90,000 to go. So we didn't want to go too small, and it's still a fraction of what needs to be done, but we need to start big and get everything in place with the training and the systems and the protocol. But we can take this down to 200 replacements, doing 50 in all 4 counties or even 25 in all 4 counties. And maybe 10 if we had to start, if the state legislature was going to do something. But the most important thing is we need to get started. We're way behind. And so even though I said it's 3,000 a year now that we have to do, really we're not going to be able to get to 3,000 a year in a few years. So it's going to go up to 4,000 and 5,000 a year. So we need to get started.
One of the things that we learned, and I'm sure Stuart can add to this, is that, when we first shopped this idea around, we thought, oh, there might just be a grant that sort of we can get, one-stop shop, we'll get a whole grant and we'll just start this program. And we kind of realized that there, is money available through the federal government, but a lot of times we might have to apply for separate grants to sort of petition out this project. And one of the things that we also thought too would be, okay, if we can develop a planning proposal, sort of a beginning scope that will look at kind of developing a list of, okay, who are the homeowners that are willing to get their cesspool replaced? What kind of outreach do we need to do? What surveys do we need to develop? Some preliminary engineering work and then some early curriculum development. This will allow us to complete the project faster. So we really kind of said, let's develop this planning proposal. But then also we decided to sort of look at other grants like the Department of Labor grant or through the EDA, so the disaster fund. Could those provide funds that don't cover the whole project, but we could piece together to like reach our full potential at that 23 million and 400 systems.
So yeah, we're looking forward to kind of opening this up for a discussion, but we're very excited about this because with this situation that we're in right now with COVID, we needed to really jumpstart this replacement of cesspools because more and more research is being done showing, and there are people on this call who've done a lot of that research showing that it's a lot more, the sewage pollution is a lot more widespread. We're lucky in Hawaii in that we're surrounded by oceans and we have a lot of sunlight, which is a great disinfectant, but there's still a lot of pollution making its way in the form of excess nutrients. And so along with replacing those, we can build that the specialized but non-tourism based workforce, get people back to work. These are green jobs that people get to work outside and help improve the environment. And then working with Department of Health and their wastewater branch and other sectors of government to streamline this process and make sure it's viable long-term to protect, our watersheds and most specifically our drinking water. But I think that one of the most important things is this is a real opportunity for Hawaii, which is kind of in last place right now when it comes to cesspools. We're the last state to ban cesspools by decades. And we have, some of the most cesspools per capita in the country. But with this plan, if we can leapfrog past just going to conventional septic and do these new nitrogen reducing biofilters and come up with new technology that's more innovative, more cost effective and better for the environment, we really can leap to be a leader in wastewater management in the country, because we can build on what's already happened in Suffolk County and Maryland and Rhode Island. We have the benefit of hindsight looking at their studies, and so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just build on what they've done and really try to become a leader in wastewater management. So with that, we'd like to kind of open it up to questions, and then just remind folks that Michael and I are here to answer, but we've also got some great folks on the call as well, on the webinar, that can answer very particular questions that we might not be able to.
We have some questions in the chat.
All right. Who wants to start?
Elizabeth, you want to read the questions?
Sure. So I'll start with at the top. Will you address the large and dense concentration of cesspools in the subdivisions of Kilauea's lower southeast rift zone, and how the State Department of Health will be dealing with that situation?
That is a good question. I cannot answer that. I'm not sure exactly what DOH is planning, but is there someone on the call that, or Michael, do you have any?
I think that's a bit beyond the scope of our project. Really, what we're trying to do is give them some technologies that we can fast track the permitting system for. So, typically a septic tank is quite easily permitted and installed on the islands, but there are more advanced technologies, like Stuart was saying, maybe layer cake leach fields, or nitrogen removing biofilters, or certain aerobic treatment units. And right now those are done on a case-to-case basis for permitting. And so the idea for this is really to test that technology, fast track the permitting, but then also create the workforce. So I can't really say what specifically Department of Health is going to do in certain areas. I know that our project is looking at installing these systems in priority 1 areas, or specific areas that we want to test their soil or climate or hydrology, so that we have a better understanding of how they work in Hawaii versus, say, the mainland.
Good answer, Michael. Our next question is, what kind of university training courses will be offered?
Also want to give a quick shout out. This is Elizabeth, who is our program manager at VI and is handling the questions. So can you repeat the question one more time and introducing?
The question, yeah, from Lauren was about university training courses. Which courses will we be offering? Maybe you want to break down about operator, inspector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I wish Rachel were on the call because she's the chancellor of University of Hawaii Community College. But we have a number of different positions, you know, the inspectors, the maintainers, and, you know, I think it'll be at all levels, Lauren, actually, you know, with courses and certifications for people who are installers. Yeah, like I said, the inspectors, the maintainers, which often if it's an ATU, it'll be the company that will do that, or they can contract out for that. Michael, do you have others?
Yeah, so I think we also wanted to use part of the programs that they're already utilizing in community colleges. So there's a pre-CAD design program. There are other programs in the trades and construction industry. And so some of the, you know, courses that could be offered will mimic there are wastewater treatment sort of training centers across the mainland, and some of them do courses on how to install specialized like ATUs or how to inspect them with the manufacturers. We would work in tandem with and the smaller companies to kind of develop a tailored curriculum that will help folks, and that goes from a certificate, you know, all the way to a pathway to a degree. So I think we're going to start smaller and really kind of get them on the pathway to a degree, but it'll be like smaller certificate programs, how wastewater treatment operators are now. And Roger Babcock, he runs that center here at WRRC.
Great, thanks, Michael. The next question is, how do businesses assessed nonprofits become part of this effort? Who will be doing the contracting?
Hey, Robin, good to hear from you. That's a good question. We're still kind of in the process of doing that. They will have to be kind of, you know, for contractors, they will have to be certified contractors. And so we're going to start creating a database now of, you know, all the available wastewater engineers, all of the, you know, certified contractors that focus on wastewater engineering, and, you know, the certified pumpers, and really try to get that essential database so it can be accessible to the public. And, you know, we're not going to really be choosing the ones. It's not so much a selection process because we need as many as we can get, but as long as they're, you know, certified and licensed, you know, we want to bring as many different ones in as possible.
If I could just interrupt for a second, Elizabeth, you're doing a great job. But I just want to remind everyone, or if you signed in a little later, you might not have heard that we would really love to get you to put your name and email address so we can, you know, make sure we get notifications out to you for seminars like this. Look for the message from April Cam in the chat, and there's a link there where you can go and enter your information. So I just want to thank you for doing that and encourage you to do that. Okay, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Tom. So the next question is, have you considered using EM technology for treating the cesspools?
You know, that's effective microorganisms. We kind of, Marvin Heskett is on the call. We had worked with Marvin after the sewage spill in 2006, and we're trying to bring them in, a particular company that used that, and they were working at the zoo. And there were problems at that point when you're introducing kind of these microorganisms into a system, especially like the alawai. On private property, it would be different. That was a public water body. There were some complications. So, that we haven't really considered it. So it's a good question. That's something that we might want to talk about. And if anybody else has some ideas about that and wants to share, please feel free to do so. Michael, do you have any other? Or
Stuart, it's Ken Tanisha. I actually posed that question. Yeah, in fact, we did get a conditional use permit to apply it in the Alawai Canal. And we had a couple of schools actually deploy the EM technology, one at the Kapahulu end and one by Alawai Elementary School. And it was quite an amazing result that in less than 10 days after the deployment, the sludge at the Kapahulu end by Jefferson Intermediate School had diminished to the point where you could actually see the sand on the bottom. And Veke was actually coming to the back end of the canal, feeding on the sand that was exposed then. So there's a lot of promise, I think, in using the EM technology for dissolving the sludge and things like that, that's associated with the cesspools. Anyway, yeah, I just thought that it might be something that we might look into as far as treating the sludge and other materials in these cesspools.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Ken. And I'm glad to hear that, yeah, there was a conditional use permit for the alawai. Yeah, so we should follow up. I'll put our emails in the chat, but let's follow up about that.
Great, thanks. Our next question from Richard: what are potential cesspool areas that are priority to get this started and the basis?
I'll let Michael take that one because he is working with we're both on the cesspool conversion working group, and Michael is working on we have a fourth category that is kind of undetermined that will probably go in one of the top 3. And so Michael knows the most about that.
Sure. I think are they asking like what are the most like the first priority levels? I mean, just a couple that come to mind: the Kaulu area and the upcountry Maui are 2 priority 1 regions that the Department of Health has identified, and I think that was back in 2017 or 18. But we're redoing that analysis to do a risk assessment using more data. So with the preliminary sewage contamination study using Delta N15 values, we'll have a lot of data that we could use to do a risk assessment of the cesspools, as well as we want to incorporate sea level rise as well. That's a very important factor that wasn't considered. So if we have cesspools along the coast, just replacing them with a septic system is not viable. And so that's a consideration that we wanted to input into that risk assessment. What was the second part of the question? I apologize.
I think that covered it, and it flows really well into our next question from Ali that says, because septic systems do not work near the shoreline, do we have promising technologies addressing that, or is that part of this project?
Yeah, there are going to be a number of, good question, Ali, of areas that, are top priorities that are very close to the coast. And like you said, the traditional septic systems generally won't work. And so, yeah, we're working with some innovative alternative ATUs, aerobic treatment units, that do a much higher level of processing of the influent and reduces the nitrogen levels pretty dramatically. And so, yeah, most of those will have to be kind of ATUs if they're really close to the coast. But we're also going to be, looking at other technologies. But I think that's probably the simplest answer for now.
Don't forget, Stuart, the incineration toilet is a consideration, as well as potentially reusing some of the recycled water from systems to maybe put into irrigation versus putting it into the near shore. You know, there's UV technology that can disinfect, but I think, you know, if we can't get the nitrogen down enough, what are some other methods that we can do to kind of make sure that it's reused and not just put directly into the groundwater?
Yeah, thank you for that, Michael, because today you know, it's called Bearing the Lead. We just installed the first Cinderella incinerating toilet at HAIMB on Coconut Island, which is really exciting. It's a waterless toilet that incinerates, and it creates 100% pathogen-free and odorless ash. And so for like our family of 4, they might have to empty this little bowl at the bottom once a week. And it can be, you know, plugged into electric, or you can use gas, propane gas. And so for areas where there's just no sanitation, and like on farms, this is going to be a great model, you know, or in tiny homes, or in disaster zones, or places where they just can't have another toilet, but they want another system. This is waterless, and so you could add it to any home without, you know, getting all the permitting and such that you would need for a traditional individual wastewater system. Thanks for that.
Our next question is from Maya. She says, are there clusters of cesspools that could be connected to sewer lines?
Yeah, but that requires collaboration with the counties, because they're the folks that handle the sewage systems. And it really would involve working with the planning offices to determine where are they adding communities and subdivisions, and is there potential to sewer that area. So right now, that's one of the things that we're looking at is, you know, there's a disconnect between the state, which manages on-site systems, and the counties, which manage those municipal or community sewer systems. Even if it's privately run, it still has to go through the county. So if we can have more collaboration between those two units to really understand what the capacity is to handle you know, new homes and new construction, that would be very important and helpful going forward. And I think the cesspool conversion working group is looking into that. It's certainly on their minds, but it's something that we haven't fully addressed yet.
Thanks, Michael. Our next question is from Danielle. Could you please include this information in the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plans update, which is underway right now, to align the mini sustainability and climate statutory targets, the initiatives for a site strategic planning perspective?
Yes. Thanks for joining, Danielle. Danielle is the state-wide climate change and sustainability coordinator. And yes, we'll be glad to kind of send that over. We've just done some presentations for folks who are working on the watershed plans for Oahu, and they just included this as one of their priority projects. And so, yeah, we definitely want to kind of get it out as many places as possible so people are aware of what's going on. So yeah, we'll follow up with you, Danielle.
And our next one, you mentioned a timeline, I think 3 years for the program. Could you repeat what that time frame was associated with?
Michael, do you want to take that one, or?
Sure. So yeah, the first early short term is to, you know, create, I think, up to 120 new workers, really develop the curriculum for these programs, whether it's certificate or pathway to a degree, really identify homes that are going to be eligible to participate in the program. And then the second and third year is really, we'll get them installed, and then we'll be monitoring these systems for a solid year to figure out how well are they removing nitrogen, how well they're removing pathogen. And then also during that time, we're performing the training for community college students, so they'll get a better understanding of how to maintain them, and then how to, you know, how to construct them at the same time. And then really the third year will be kind of evaluating the data and working with the Department of Health to figure out which systems are best to meet their permitting needs, and creating the database. And then kind of packaging this so that we can present it to the state and say, you know, here's a model that could be used in each of the counties. Here's some things that we learned, and it could be incorporated into the state's long-range plan for cesspool upgrades.
Great. Our list of questions continues. Lots of great questions. Thanks to everyone for submitting them. So the next one is, from the perspective of both community health and aquifer health, where are the areas of most threat from wastewater contamination in the state? And will you select your test sites in those areas?
Yeah, so good question. I just shared, Yoko is one of our team members as well as our project coordinator, and he posted this and I just reposted it. Here's at the bottom of the chat, DOH's cesspool priority areas, and it shows those areas across the state. And you know, we're focusing on, like we said, Kahaluu here, Waimanalo, and Waialua, where Surfrider independently has also really seen a lot of water quality issues in those areas, parts of the North Shore. And then in Kauai, you know, we have areas, I think, as a way of doing it, kind of a broad spectrum thing is you know, it's density and depth to groundwater. Those are kind of two of the main issues that we will kind of use as criteria to select which ones, but we also have to have willing homeowners, you know, with the right conditions. If it's too difficult, they're in the rocky soil and it's really steep, we might not be able to do it. So we've got to have willing homeowners in those areas. And, you know, we're going to try to favor those who are low income, who couldn't afford this themselves. And so, yeah, those will be kind of some of the criteria that we'll use.
We have a question from Henrietta. For the treatment efficiency of new OSDS, will you consider nitrogen only or also chemicals like pharmaceuticals?
Well, the good news is that, you know, one of the systems we're looking at, the nitrogen reducing biofilters that came out of Stony Brook University, and where they're working in Suffolk County and Long Island, they do a really good job of not only, and this is a passive system, and it uses, you know, wood chips and sand and this kind of layer cake model that Michael mentioned, but it's also really good at reducing pharmaceuticals. We were just on an ocean sewage pollution call with the Nature Center today and many other groups, and some of these other, you know, problems that we have with PFAS and so, yeah, there's a lot of promise with the NRB, nitrogen reducing biofilters. Michael, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure, Roger, that's one of the things we'll be evaluating. I think you know, the Department of Health is mostly concerned with nitrogen and pathogen removal, so viruses, protozoa, those type of things, which, you know, are kind of directly in their purview. I think that the chemicals are, but that's something that has been really difficult, because even if you look at Suffolk County, they don't really have legislation to address that. So yeah, I think there's a need for it, but I don't know that it's like priority in the list. I wish it was.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Marvin. Is there a plan to consider municipal scale sewage injection sites for similar upgrades, especially in the light of the Lahaina Supreme Court decision?
Yeah, that's a tough question, Marvin. For now, we were just talking with Roger Babcock yesterday. I think we're focused on, for this project at least, on individual wastewater systems at the home level. I think there is definitely going to be, you know, a need for more clustered or even decentralized systems for communities. And we're working at, you know, in Maui on you know, a potential situation where there are a lot of condos close together and are using injection wells. And so we're trying to find a way so they can stop using injection wells and are pretty close to that. So that's exciting, where we can actually recycle the water, which for those of you, there are a couple of you, I think, on the call that were part of that, that long 10-year battle in Maui County with the injection wells. You know, that's what we wanted all along. We really want to reuse the wastewater. And so our motto was, don't inject, redirect. And Robin was part of that effort, and many others. So thanks for that question.
Thanks, Stu. So the last question in the chat, as for right now, feel free to throw us some more, is the one that we often get, but who pays for the cesspool upgrade? Does the homeowner pay, or is there a subsidy to upgrade? Where does the money come from?
So are they asking in relation to the project or in the broader context of other cesspools? Richard, would you mind clarifying?
Hey, Michael, why don't you just answer for both cases?
Okay, that's fine. So for the project, what many other states have done is, if they're doing this demonstration or pilot project, it is paid for by whoever's performing this. So for our project, we've incorporated that into our grant for the costs of the demonstration project. So the homeowner really wouldn't pay anything, maybe a small maintenance fee or something, but they're not going to pay for the project. In the broader scheme of things, the state is working on figuring out what are the best financial mechanisms to help people upgrade their cesspools. And there should be some reports that will come out to the public within the next, 6 months or something, that will detail what are the financial mechanisms that are available right now. But really, it's from looking at other states, they've dumped money into it. New York, Suffolk County, they gave up to $30 million for grants to help homeowners convert their septic systems and cesspools. So it just requires money, and it's the big question is, where does it come from? But for our project, it's going to be built into the grant, and homeowners won't.
All right, well, any, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's the last of the chat questions. If anybody has any more they want to throw our way.
Yeah.
Well, while people are thinking about that, I want to just let everybody who attended, everybody who's still on the call, know how much we appreciate you joining us. This is a big success. This is one of the biggest seminar audiences we've ever had. I think I saw, the highest number I saw was 81 at one point. People were coming and going to some extent. So there were at least 81 people who saw some of this presentation, and that's fantastic. Are there any new questions, Elizabeth?
No questions.
Okay. I just want to thank Elizabeth, first of all, for handling the questions, and thank our speakers, Stuart Coleman and Michael Mezzacapo, and Harry for coordinating this seminar series this semester. Harry Lee is WRRC faculty and College of Engineering faculty, and April Cam and Pat Hirakawa again for doing the logistics. So thanks everybody, really appreciate it, and we hope to see you at all of our seminars this semester.